Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome along to this afternoon session where we're looking at one of our credit control sessions, and we're looking at specifically customer statements in this afternoon session. So we're looking at not only generating them, but also how to choose your layouts, and also how to generate your statements as well. And we'll run a little poll in just a moment as well to see how you currently send them out if you're currently generating statements. Anyway, just before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. So as usual, you don't need a microphone for these sessions. If you've got one and you've enabled it, you'll just find you muted. That's done automatically. You'll find you can't unmute yourself. So any questions that you have for us today, you'll need to pop them into the questions panel. Should be in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you can't currently see that though, all you need to do is click your little icon on your toolbar, the one that looks like the speech bubble containing the question mark. It'll expand the panel. You should see the box in the bottom right-hand corner. And at that point, you'll be able to start typing any comments or questions. Today, I'm joined by Abby and by Tina, who will be on hand to answer any questions that you have. So keep them busy. So you'll either get an answer to your query, or we may just be a case we're pointing in the right direction. There may be a help center article, which generally there will be, on everything that we covered today. And it may be a case that if it's a bit more complex, we may point in the direction of our support team. There is a couple of handouts that you can download today. One is essentially a copy of the slides, which any links on there will then work. You get all the coloured backgrounds, etc. There is a print-friendly option as well, which basically got all the colour stripped out, because I know a lot of you like to print it. So all the coloured backgrounds, etc., have been removed. So you've got those available to work through as well. We will make them available afterwards as well, as we do for all of the questions and answers that we get. We make those available afterwards as well. So I know a lot of you in the past have asked about things like copying and pasting the questions and how can you download a copy. We just make that available afterwards. Watch out for your link. It will be included on the follow-up email. Right, now this is what we're going to be covering in today's session. So a little bit of background to generating statements, and then we're going to look at the statements themselves. So we'll look at the layouts, the settings in the background. We'll obviously the main part of the demo, generating your statements. I'm going to mention a little bit about APAY as well, which formerly used to be known as SagePay, but now known as APAY. And then we just pick up on some of the other areas to consider when you're generating statements as well. And then just at the end, we'll explain and just outline maybe some of the upcoming webinars we've got as well. If you hadn't had a chance to look at the webinar timetable in the last week, we've now got January sessions available, which includes MTD and also version 29, which we'll be covering from the middle of January onwards. I'm not sure of the release date of that yet, but it will be early on in the new year. So if you want to see a demo of that one, get yourself signed up for one of those sessions. Loads of dates throughout January for that one. Follow-up email will be sent around about an hour after we finish today. Now, just before we get started, got a little bit of a poll for you today. So how do you currently generate customer statements? Let me just launch that one. So do you generate them and send them via email? Do you print them? Do you use a combination of maybe printing some of them and emailing others? Or do you use something else? Maybe use third-party software. Maybe you just upload them. Customers go in and download them from their account. So let me know. So I'll just give that another 20 seconds or so, just to give you a chance to vote for that one. And then I'll share the results with you as well, just so you can see that. Right, excellent. Okay, let me just share the results so you can see what people have voted for today. So we've got the vast majority have said, well, 60% of you saying you currently email, 10% of you saying you print them, and 30% of you saying use a combination of email and print. So maybe you don't have email addresses for all of your customers, or maybe they still prefer to receive them via like an actual hard copy of their statement. Right, okay, thanks for that. Get rid of that slide. Okay, so we'll get started with a little bit of background to statements to begin with. So if you offer credit, as you'll probably know, the main aim of working in credit control is to ensure that you get paid on time. So statements and letters obviously going to help in that area. So keeps your customers informed, reminds them, prompts them for payment. So it gives them a gentle nudge that this is still outstanding and it still needs to be paid. And I've got a quote there at the bottom as well that I've found in relation to credit control. So old one, Benjamin Franklin, creditors have better memories than debtors. So in your case, you've got a better memory that your customer owes you money than them remembering that they owe you money. Right, okay, let's get cracking with statements. So now we're going to have a look at layouts as well, and there are loads of layouts available. And it's a case of which one do you choose? Now, if you haven't really selected your layout before, we're going to have a look at them and just explain what the various options that you've got are. There is a favorites option as well, which we will cover in this session. Let me just share my screen and we'll run through a bit of a demo. I'll just highlight one customer for the time being, and I'm going to go into statements at the top. And when we first go into statements, you'll see that you've got your two folders on the left. So you've got favorites, and because I haven't selected anything yet, it just tells me no favorites have been added. If we go into layouts itself, you'll see that we've got loads of different layouts available. Now, a lot of them have been designed obviously over the years, and you've still got the historic ones in there as well. So 11-inch, some of them were based on around 2-port stationery with tear-off remittance. So there's various types. There's 11-inch for letter size stationery, there's A4 if you print them on A4 stationery, and down the bottom we've got the ones of quite a few of them are now designed around email as well. And of course you can amend them as well, so you can amend them to suit your own needs, and you could design your own, but much easier if you do want to amend one to find the one that's closest to what you want and then go down that route of amending it. So things like adding your logo, maybe adding other text, adding terms and conditions, options for paying you, how they can pay you online, that type of thing. But I just wanted to pick up on the part of the descriptions themselves. So on the descriptions, you'll see, if we just go back up to the top, some will say grouped and all items, some will say grouped and outstanding items only, some will say individual. And I just wanted to quickly explain what those mean. And I'll quickly run through a bit of an example with some of these as well. So for that customer, I've got this customer here, and if I have a look at the activity first of all, and you can see we've got, if I highlight this invoice, you can see on this invoice here, invoice 123, that there are 2 items on the invoice. And for invoice 130, there's just the 1 item. So what I'll do first of all, just still with this one customer selected, is we'll pop into statements, into layouts, and I'm just going to preview one. So we'll just choose the top one for the time being. So this is a grouped and all items. I'll just accept the default date range, and it's just going to generate the 1 for the time being. Now with this one being a grouped and all items, what it will do, it will show all items that have been, or that are on the activity within the actual date range itself. So it would include things like your invoices, receipts, payments on account, credit notes. It would show all of the transactions that are within that date range. So that's an all item statement. If we switch to an outstanding item, so this is similar, it's grouped and outstanding items only. So it's the outstanding items only that I want to concentrate on. So again, I'll just preview that one. At this time, we're only going to see what's outstanding that falls within the date range that we've specified. So it's all to do with the level of detail that you want. Do you just want a statement of their account? This is outstanding, this is what needs to be paid. Or do you want a statement that shows the activity within a certain period? I suppose to a certain extent, it would be a bit like if you got your bank statement, is it a statement that just says, right, this is what your balance is currently? or do you want to see all the transactions within that period? Obviously, bank statement, albeit you're going to see that all the movement in and out. So what do you want to show on that, on the account? So that's the difference between an all items and an outstanding items only. Now the difference between grouped and individual, I'll just try and cover that one again. So we'll run the same statement. So this time it's a grouped and outstanding items only. And you'll see this time we've got one line for invoice 123 and we've got one line for invoice 130. So it's a grouped statement. Now what the grouped means is, you might be familiar with grouping, is that if you've got an invoice that's got multiple items on it, it means it's going to group it together. So for invoice 123, there were actually two lines on that invoice. So it's just going to show one line for the full invoice value. Whereas if we choose an individual all items this time, rather than a grouped. Sorry, I'm getting myself confused there. Grouped and outstanding, that's what we just looked at. We'll look at individual and outstanding. So again, we'll just accept the default date range. And this time when we run this one, we can see the breakdown. So we see the individual items this time, it's not grouping them. So we see there are the two items listed separately for invoice 123. So it really just depends, what do you want to show? I suppose if you work in an industry where, or a business sector where maybe your invoices are quite lengthy, do you want to show all the individual items from that invoice, or do you just want to group together? So that's how you're going to go about choosing the appropriate layout. Now, all of them will have slightly different layouts. You'll see some of them are designed, where's the one I'm after? This one here, as an example, this plain paper one. If I just preview that one, you'll see that this one, it has boxes on the design. So if you are emailing or printing just on plain paper, then that maybe you would consider using that one. Now you can just obviously just go through, preview them, find the one you're after. Now if it's particularly one that you are going to use, so I'll pick on this one. I'll just click on the star to flag it as a favorite. And what that will do is it will add that layout into the favorites folder. So it's now listed in there. And it means that when I come into the statements area, because it defaults to favorites, it lists the layout. I'm not having to come into this layouts area and think, oh yeah, which is the one I normally run? I can't remember. You might be able to detect it from the last run option. But if you've got it flagged as favorites, you don't need to go down that route. You've got that available in other areas as well. Reporting, when you're going into invoices as well, you can flag different layouts as your favorite. It just means it's that bit easier to find. So choose your layout. Let's go back to the slides. Next, we're going to have a look at some of the setting options that you've got. Now, there aren't a lot of settings for statements. We'll find them within settings, customer defaults, and the statements option. And what this is certain text that will be used on statements. So for an invoice, do we want it to say goods and services for credits? It'll just say the word credit, discounts, and similar for payments. Now these 4 boxes that you do have available, I'll just quickly show you how you access that in a moment, up to 60 characters in each one. So let's pick up on an example of that as well. So back to my screen. We're just going to pop into settings, customer defaults, and then we got that statements tab at the top. So you've got these 4 boxes, as I say, 60 characters available in each one. So if you would rather it say goods and services, so if you're doing a grouped statement, it should pull this text through. Now, if you don't, if you want it just to say goods or maybe services only, you can amend that text. If you want to change it rather than just credit, maybe you want to send it to credit note, then again, you can do that as well. Just a case of you updating that text. Now, if we go and have a look at a grouped statement, so this one should be grouped. We have a look at it. Again, I'll accept the default. And I've got one that doesn't use that. Let's see if I've got a different one I could use. So here's a good example. So on this particular statement, rather than actually use the text from the individual items themselves, or even just the first item, you can see it's pulling through the text. Similar if I were to add a credit note, which I'll quickly do. So I just do a batch credit against this customer. We'll just use today's date. Let's put a credit note number in. And then we'll say in the details, say returned, let's try and type it in correctly. So we'll say returned goods, and we'll say that was £20 plus VAT. We'll save that. So the detail there is returned goods. But when we generate a statement, again, we'll go back to this very first one that's listed. Let's preview it. And you'll see on this one, it says credit. So it's using, it will depend on your layout. It is using those descriptions to pull it through onto the statement. Again, just to try to simplify it a little bit. So you've still got the date, you've still got the reference number, or the invoice number in this case, you've still got the value, but you don't have the individual, the sort of the actual detail, I suppose. If you want that, again, it's just a case of picking the right layout. Hope that one makes sense. It's not very often that you would find that people do go into settings, customer defaults, and then statements and actually change it. But that's what it's there for, and that's where it's picking that up for if you've been looking for that. Right, what we'll do now is we're going to concentrate on actually generating some statements at this point. So we'll just pop back to the slides. So we've already seen how you go about generating statements, but I'm just going to quickly run through it. And obviously, we'll generate more than one as well. So we're going to obviously go into customers. We'll either select the records or deselect all records. So we'll discuss that as well about selecting records for statements. And then we'll just go into statements and we'll generate them. Now, how often you do that? I think historically people tend to do it on a monthly basis, but it is entirely up to you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on sort of the last day of the month either, or the first day of the month when you send it out. I think probably, again, historically, that tends to be what you find. But again, it's entirely up to you what you do with that. You've got the options to email them, which the majority of you said you were generating emails. And a number of you said you were also printing as well. Obviously, email, very, very quick, very simple these days as well. Now, I do want to pick up on the options of selecting records, because that's quite an important option, particularly if you're doing a combination of emailing and printing as well. It can save you quite a bit of time, that one. So I want to quickly show you the list selection styles as well, and maybe applying filters. So back to my screen, and we'll run through some examples. Now, when I've gone into customers, you can see I've got one selected there at the moment. And if I go into statements and just preview the statement, I'll just accept all the defaults again. It just does the one based on the one I've got selected. If I highlight another one, again, similar, if I was running a report, it would only run a report based on what I've got selected. So again, if I go into statements, it should generate the statements, and this time it generates two. So if I'm previewing it, got one for that first customer, and then one for that second customer. Now, if you're finding that you're going through selecting them, you can flag the account as well, email or print if you want to. If you want to do them all, you don't have to go through and select everything. What you can do is just click clear, and with nothing selected, if I then go to generate statements, I'll just do this month to date, just to try and reduce the number of records that are then going to be picked up. And in this case, it's generated, well, it looks like 6 statements, unless of course some of them have gone on to an additional page. But it will generate a statement based on basically any account that has transactions that need to be brought in or has an outstanding balance that needs to be pulled through. So if you're finding certain records are excluded, make sure either you've got them selected or make sure that you've got nothing selected. So say for instance, I was in that position where these accounts have got a 0 balance. It might be that I'm in this position where I've selected something like down here, and if I go back up and I think, well, actually I've got nothing selected there. So if I was to then go and generate a statement, and you might be in this position where you get that message, and it tells me the report could not be generated, no data was returned for the report. So always a good idea if you want to sort of run your statements for everyone, just click on clear. You can see clear's grayed out when there's nothing selected. If I do highlight something, you'll see these become active again. But if I click clear so nothing is selected, you'll see it's grayed out. And then I would go and run the statements and it would run it for everyone. Now the other option is to go down and select the ones that you want. So let's say I wanted those 3 only, highlight them, and then we go into statements and it would just run it for the ones I've got selected. Obviously, if there's an account that maybe I include this one with a 0 balance, if there was nothing to include on a statement, it wouldn't generate a statement for that specific customer. Now, I want to quickly mention selection styles as well while we're on the topic of highlighting records. There are 2 selection styles available. Now, at the moment, I'm set up for what's termed the Sage selection style. So that means when I highlight a record and then I go and click on another record, it highlights that one. So the Sage selection style is like an on-off selection style. You click on it to highlight it. If you click it again, it removes the highlight. So I can just go down and randomly select the ones I'm after. If I deselect it. The other selection style is if I go into Tools and then Options, and this will impact the rest of your software as well. If we go into the Environment tab, you've got your styles listed. So we got the Sage selection style. By default, I think these days you actually be set to the Windows selection style. And what that it does, if we select that one, go into Customers. So if I now highlight that first customer and then come down and click on this sort of second one, you'll see that the highlight follows me around. It's quite common, people all mention that one when they're in the bank reconciliation window, for instance. How do I select more than one record? And with the Windows selection style set, what you need to do if you want to select multiple records is, let's say we want to leave this one selected. If I want to select another one, if I hold down the Control key, keep it held down, and then I can start clicking on accounts in the list. Again, still with the Control key held down. If I think I've selected this one in error, I'll get rid of that one, just click on it. Still got the Control key held down at that point. If I release the Control key and I was to click on an account, you'll see, again, the highlight starts following me around. If I want to do it for a range, select the first one, hold down the Shift key this time, and select the last account in the range that I want to highlight. So it does sort of, you highlight or clicking on the first and then last. It would highlight everything in between as well. So you've got those two selection styles. I don't know if it's just because I've used Sage for so long that I still prefer more of the on-off type switching. So back into Tools, Options, Environment. I'm going to set that back to the Sage selection style. And that means I'm back to the click to highlight or click to remove a highlight. If you want to remove all highlights quickly, just click clear at the top. And again, it resets the list. So have a go of that as well. That could potentially save you a bit of time. No, I'm just to save a little bit of time, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select those three for the statements today. And we'll highlight those three. I'm going to click statements and we'll just use this one for the time being. And obviously I can send it to the printer. It's nice and easy. And I can also email it as well. Now, if you work with the desktop version of Outlook, generally you will find that your layouts will work with that quite happily. So if I output mine to email at this point, again, we'll say the month to date in this case. All I've done there is, just in case you've not used it before, is this little pencil icon on the end of the date range. It gives you these sort of what we term the quick date selection. So I wanted to use the sort of the last month, for instance. I can do that and it would obviously change the dates accordingly. I'll just use this month because I've just literally put some transactions in a little bit earlier, so I know they've got some in there. So if I OK that, it should generate the emails for me. It tells me the report has been successfully output to email. I'll just OK that. And then I am prompted, do you want to update the communication history? I'll come back to that communication history in a few minutes' time. So I'll just click yes for the time being. And as far as email is concerned, that would be it done. Now, there are two options for email as well, and this is where you may find, you might have looked at email and thought, well, actually it takes longer than you think. You can set it so when it outputs to email, you can have it sent automatically. By default, if I just bring up my email software, so this is my Outlook, what it will do is if I go into the drafts folder, you can see what it's done is it's split them. So it's essentially it's generated an email for each one. So in this case, I've got it set when it outputs to email, it'll go into my Outlook, and it means that I can actually go into the email. Let me just bring that one across. Everything's opening on my other screen today. So it'll let me sort of access the email. I can make whatever amends I want. When I'm happy with that one, I can click send. So that potentially means that you're going through each of those in turn to open them and then click send. So you've got that extra step involved. But you can amend the email settings within your statement layout. So when you output them, it just sends them automatically. If you need some advice on that, you'll find all about email settings within our help center. If you get stuck as well, obviously our support team is on hand. If anyone doesn't use Outlook, I know the vast majority of you will be using the desktop version of Outlook. We tend to find about 90% of our customers do. But if you're not, so let's say you're using like Gmail, for instance, or another webmail-based program, then again, you'll find information within our help center on how to configure your settings to work with that. Now, when I generated that statement as well, it did prompt me, do you want to update to the communication history? Now, the communication history, what it's referring to is, if I go into this record here, it refers to this option here, the communications tab. Now, you do not have this available if you're on the essentials level of the software. The other levels, you should have communications. If you go into that one, and it will have a record of when the statement was actually sent. So if I go into it, you'll see the basic details. It'll subject line. It'll give me an idea of what was used at the time. You can also, as well, if anyone does use it, if you integrate with Office 365, which is something that your software can do, what it will then do is it will actually host a copy of your statement. So it will upload a copy of your statement and it will attach it at this point. It means you'd have an extra little icon in this column here. So you can click it and you can view that document at that point. And you would need to integrate with Office 365 for that one though. Again, you'll find more information about integration in our Help Center. But at this stage, it just records a basic entry into the communication history. So we can see it was a statement, etc. But just to confirm again, you will only have the communications tab available if you're on the standard level or the professional level of the software. If you're on Essentials, you don't have that communications tab. It is an extra feature on the higher levels. Right, a couple of questions coming through there. So Margaret's got a couple of questions there. Margaret's just asking, can you show us how to change the subject line of the Outlook email? And also another question for Margaret, can you show us how to change the file name of the statement? So let's try and quickly pick that up. I didn't have that one planned in, Margaret, but we'll quickly show you how to do that one. So what we'll do is we'll just highlight our statement. We'll edit it. Let's go into the report designer. It'll bring up your layout, the design of that, and then you can do a number of things. So if you just want to change the file name itself, you can go into File, and then you've got the Save As option. Give it a different file name. What you can also do is you can go into the report option, and you've got report properties. So you can actually change, so when you're on your list of statements, you can change the report name and the report description. So these options here, so let's say I wanted to put my name in just so you can see that. And I'll put my name in this one as well. Let's make them obvious. So I've called it report name, and in the description we'll put Michael report description. So I'll just OK that, and then I'll go and do a save as, and I'll just call it say statement. Save that one, and then close out. And then if I just close out the statements completely and then go back in. Now you will notice at that point, it's still got the original one that I flagged as a favorite. So I'll deselect it this time, go back into layouts, and then it's just a case I just need to find it on the list here, the one I've just done. So there it is there. You can see the report name has pulled through that I changed, the description, and then you've got the file name tagged on the end there. So let me flag that one as a favorite this time. The other thing to mention, if we go into edit, and you've got email settings within here as well. So if you go back into the report menu, you've got email settings in here. No, I don't want to get involved with this today. So I'm not sure if that's the file name you meant, Margaret, of the attachment. If it is, that's where you would find it. You've got other settings in there as well. You'll find loads of information on this within our Help Center, should you need it. So you can change things like your subject line, which of your email addresses it picks up from within the customer record. You can choose to send it as plain text or as an attachment. So there's a number of options in there that you can change, but again, you'll find detailed information on the design side within our Help Center. Right. Let's move on. I'm going to pop back to the slides. Keep your questions coming. Well, we'll pop back to the slides for the time being, and I just want to quickly mention APAY. Now, you may or may not have heard of that. You may have heard its original name, originally, when it was part of Sage itself. We used to call it Sage Pay. And what this enables you to do is when you're generating your statements, if you're emailing them out, you can include a Pay Now button on your statements. And what that means is your customers can click that and pay you online. Obviously, it reduces the admin then. Might save you some time as well. And essentially, it'll make it that bit easier for your customers to pay you. So they pay you online. As far as you're concerned, you don't need to then enter that transaction. The transaction, the payment information will just download directly into your accounts. Now, you can potentially include a Pay Now button on invoices, statements, and also letters. You want to find out more information about the likes of APAY. All you need to do within your software is just click the Apps and Add-ons link, top left-hand corner. In fact, I'll quickly show you this one. Go back, quickly pop back to my screen. So Apps and Add-ons, this option here in top left. And the one you're looking for is this one here, APAY by Elevon. So you find out more information just by clicking the link there. So imagine, you're sending out that statement or even your invoice, you're including that Pay Now button. Your customers are paying you online, and then you don't need to get involved in that transaction. You're not having to record that transaction manually in your accounts. You're not having to handle checks or cash. They're just paying you direct online. Obviously, that transactional information is being pulled directly into your account, so can be a good time saver, that one. That is a paid for service, but you'll find out, again, you'll find more information by clicking Learn More and following the links. Got a quick question from Maxine there as well. Maxine's on about she doesn't have the email/print option, I think, on your screen. How do you get that on your customers? Let me just try see if I can show you that one. So I'm assuming you're on about this one, Maxine. So email or print. Can you let me know what level of software you're on there, Maxine? I suspect it's if you're on Essentials, just by when you're mentioning it not being there, I suspect that might not be an option that's listed. If that's the case, and what this refers to is if you go into a record, it refers to this little checkbox. So if I take the tick out of that one and just save it, you'll see when I get back to this, it changes back to print Essentials. Maxine, if you could, just go into one of your customer records. So just go into your customer record and see next to your email settings, do you have this checkbox? Again, let me know if it's a yes you do or no you don't. So it's this one here, this little checkbox just beneath the email addresses. I'll just switch it back on, click save, and it sets it back here. Now, what that means and the benefits of using this is you can build in filters and criteria into your layouts, but it also means you could just filter them as well. So those of you that said you print some of them and others you email, if you've got them flagged in this way, if I go into filter, let's just see if I can find it. Can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. I'll see if I can find that. I'm sure you'll be able to apply a filter based on that. I might come back to that one though. So Maxine, you're mentioning you don't have that checkbox, so I'm assuming that option is just not available on the Essentials level. Right, okay. Let's get back to our slides just for a few moments. Final thing I want to quickly mention to you today is other areas to consider. So we just looked at statements today. Now, obviously taking that a stage further, you've got letters options available to you as well. So maybe you can start going down the route of debt chasing letters. You can generate those, you can print them, and you can email them as well. Again, a bit like what we've done with statements today, you can amend those layouts as well, should you need to. You've also got the Chase Debt View. If you're on the standard edition or the professional level of the software, you've got Chase Debt View. And you've also got that communications tab that we mentioned as well. So other things to look at beyond just sending statements. Again, you'll find loads of information about these options within our help center. Now that brings us to the end of the demos. And we will hang around to pick up some additional questions just for the next few minutes. If you've got any, please pop them in there. And we'll try and pick up as many as we can. But just to quickly mention some of the upcoming webinars, I did mention earlier that we've now got the January sessions available to book onto. So if you are interested, some new topics that we're introducing, global changes we're going to be covering, version 29. You'll find out more information about that one from the middle of January. So we're already taking bookings for those sessions if you want to come along and see a demo of those. MTD, or Making Tax Digital for VAT. HMRC are introducing new penalties in 2023. So if you want to come out and find a little bit more about those, then please get yourself signed up. But have a good look through that timetable and you'll see the sessions that we've got booked in. Again, they're all free to attend. If you can't attend them, we make the recordings available afterwards. And if there's any requests of topics you'd like to see covered, do let us know. There'll be a little survey pop up as you leave the session today. So if you've got any thoughts, ideas, requests that you'd like to share with us, pop it on there. Now, let me take a quick opportunity to just to thank you for your time for coming along today. I hope you found it useful. For some of you, it might just be a sort of almost like a pat on the back, a little bit of reassurance that what you're doing is right. For others, you may not have even gone down the route of generating statements yet. So hopefully it's given you some food for thought of some of the options you've got available. But again, any feedback, just pop it on the survey. Follow-up email should be with you in round about an hour's time. Right, any additional questions at all for me? Just want to quickly go back to Maxine's query. So Maxine mentioned that because she's on the essentials level, she doesn't have this email or print option. And that means if you're doing a combination of maybe emailing or printing, you might think, well, which one should I? Which ones do I email? Which ones do I print? If you want an equivalent of this one, what you could do is if you go into a record, we could go into the likes of the defaults, and we could use one of these fields, the custom fields, maybe change one of them to email or print. And then it would just be a case of updating the field accordingly. Now, you'll see I've got mine called customer type, sales rep and region. And what I can do then is if I right click one of my column headings, I can look for that on my list. Where is it? Have I got it? There it is. So analysis type, the analysis 1, 2, and 3 will be at the bottom. So if I just switch that one on, it then means I've got that. Essentially, I've got the equivalent. It means I could then easily see which ones I email, which ones I print. So, I can sort by that column as well. So if I wanted all my sort of ones in this case that I've got flagged as public, I can easily go down and select the specific ones. In your case, it will be the ones that you've got flagged as email or the opposite, print. So maybe go down that route, Maxine. That's an alternative as you're on the essentials level. So just to confirm where those were, I went into a record. So go back into that one, onto the defaults, and it's these custom fields here. If you want to change the titles, you can do that as well. All you would do is you would go into settings, configuration, and we will have the custom fields option here at the top. So if I wanted to call that within customer record, email or print, for instance, then you can do that. Margaret, you're just asking, can the list of fields be shown in alphabetical order in the drop down? I'm afraid not. That functionality isn't in there at the moment. They'll always be in the basically the whatever order you've got them. Right, okay, they were the only questions we had, so I'm going to pop back to the slides. We'll end the webinar at that point. Watch out for your follow-up email. You should receive that around about an hour's time, and survey should pop up as you leave. If you've got any thoughts, ideas, requests that you want to share with us, if you can take a minute to pop it onto the short survey that pops up, be greatly appreciated. Many thanks, and hopefully we'll see you next time.